Hello and welcome back to another episode of Scriptcase by Jamie. And in this episode, I want to show you the first things you want to do when you first install Scriptcase. So let's have a look, shall we? Okay, so imagine this. I have just installed Scriptcase. I don't have any projects here. It's blank. Okay, and with that, I have the option to create a new project. Now, that's not what I want to do. The first thing you do once you have installed your copy of Scriptcase is come up here to your options and check out, first of all, my Scriptcase. Okay, and in here, you can first of all configure your version or your copy, your environment that you are going to work in. Now there are a load more settings and we will come to those in a few moments, but these are maybe the first ones that you want to tackle because they're quick and easy. Okay, so here we can specify the language for which we want the environment in. So if I maybe want it in German or Spanish or French or Italian or any of these other languages, whatever they are, Chinese, Japanese maybe, and then of course change the language for the environment. Now you may have done that when you logged in and maybe not. Of course, below that you have then options for using the security and the use of password. Now what these do is give your platform during the development full access to security. So if I enable the use of security here, when I then try to modify my applications which have been locked or secured, should I say, by the security environment once generated, because you will enable security on those applications, and then of course you will not be able to use them. It will tell you you have no access. Now, in those cases, you can just uncheck this box because by default that is in fact checked. I have it unchecked, and this way I can develop my applications without any concern for the security environment. Now, in some cases this may become an issue, so I highly advise you to always test your environment first. Now I will create another video on setting up a test environment so that you can test your platform and make sure your security works, all those variables are set and everything else in the next video maybe. For now, let's continue with the settings. So we have here some initial information, okay? Doesn't really matter, whatever you want to do there, you go ahead and do it. You have the option to show the friendly URL. You see I have that defined because if I set a friendly URL, then ideally that is what I want to see. Okay, so below that I have some options to change the width and increment of the menu interface as well as the application interfaces. Now you can specify anything you want here. I think these are actually the default values, and personally maybe I would even, because I like things a little smaller, I would possibly set that to 240 and 4 maybe, I don't know, but at the same time maybe you would also want to increase that to something larger. Now you have here also the option to auto save, and that will then automatically save your applications whenever you go to close them or move around within your applications. So if you make any adjustments in the app, then it will auto save. Otherwise, you'll keep getting a box or not. And then of course, maybe your work will not save. Check that, and that way you will always save your work. Below that, we also have the option to display insert code on events. And there I have yes. We have then also convert indentation to tab, and I have yes, and then display subfolders in the application list, which yes. So I think those are the best options to have there. And then below that, we have some further options for the application execution on creation. Now we can run the application after the default app creation. I don't think that's, I hate to waste time, so I have that unchecked. Now I don't like to display messages to say flags all the time. Again, it's just to save time. So I have all of these options here unchecked so that, yeah, I don't feel the need of having those popping up and informing me all the time. Below that, we have the option to use hotkeys, which of course, hotkeys are great. If you can remember them and learn them, of course, then awesome, have them enabled. Now, below that, we have the code editor enhancements. Of course, you want this enabled. So with that all set, click the save button. It will say log out or do that later. So I will choose that later because it's saved those settings now. And then I can come here to settings. And of course here we have a load more options to choose from. And this is where, of course, it could get a little complicated and of course take you more time, which is why covering here the my settings first, well, that made sense, right? Okay, so on the settings page, by default, we're viewing here the system settings first. And we have here our language. So, and the system settings are for the total environment, okay? So the my settings is for you as a developer, as a single developer. Now for the entire environment, I can specify everything here, including the default values I want to have specified for my applications. So for instance, if I, as a business owner, have purchased a license of Scriptcase, then and I would possibly have somebody else develop those platforms, learn it myself as well, whatever that is going to be, or maybe you are just going to do it entirely. Regardless, specify your preferences straight away. And that way, when you come to create applications or anybody else comes to create applications, they will have them according to what you have specified within these settings. Okay, so this is where these settings are quite important and can save a ton of time. Now, generally, when you start a project, you will have the project default values. Okay, and they, of course, you can adjust those according to the specific project. But in many cases, I would imagine that you are going to be the owner of the license and you will be developing the platform, and maybe at some point somebody will jump in or not. But regardless of, specify your settings here and make your future life much easier, because once it's set, your applications, well, they will follow your specific settings. So let's come back here to the system settings again and cover some of these options that we have here. Okay, so we can specify here the documentation type. We have online and local. We have then also the language. Now the documentation type is then for the help, and the language again for the help. Now that should be via the environment or the language that I set up here. Now I prefer to use the online documentation, so I will change that now. And you see, I don't generally come in here and change my settings either, because I'm typically installing and uninstalling or actually changing the environment, and lately, thankfully, I haven't actually been doing that. So it's a very good idea that I also go through these settings now, right? Okay, so below that, I have the option to choose how many applications I want to compile in parallel. So when we go to generate our applications, I think the default here is 6. I have 8. And of course, if you have a fast PC or a dedicated server, maybe you may want to increase that. Now, I think 8 is good. So I have it at 8. Below that, we have the option to display the compile time. I have yes, because I'm a curious guy. And then how many automatic application copies. Now I have 10. You can decrease that if you want to save on space. Okay, if you're worried about space, then maybe 4 or 5 of those would suffice. I think 5 is more than enough. Even alerts of 5 days. Again, this depends on how often you are using the environment. If you're using it every day or not, maybe you will want to increase or decrease that alert time, as well as then also the copies, right? So we have then also the backup alert, and that can be sent to all users. So then, if you have a developer using it, they can go ahead and perform the backup, or maybe inform the administrator, whatever's good. I think all users, if you know you're going to have multiple users, why not let everybody know? And that way, it's going to be done, right? So below that, we have the check for update versions, check on all days, check on the defined day, check on a defined day, or don't check at all. So that is entirely up to you. And of course, the updates, again, these are by choice. You're not forced to apply the update, okay? You apply them by choice. So there's no Microsoft Windows here, okay? Sorry, Windows. Sorry, Microsoft. Yeah, I shouldn't have said that, maybe. Who knows? Anyway, and then we have performing Scriptcase database verification. I have yes defined because I think it's good to verify it every so often. We have the session timeout. I have it defined as 90 minutes. I think, 90, 120 is good. The time to expire for cookies, I have that at 180. Again, you can increase that time. If it's only you going to be using that, increasing this to maybe 180 and this maybe to 320, because it's only me using this machine on this local environment, which this one isn't. This is actually my server. So I'll maybe set 80 days here or 30 days, and depending on how long you want that person to have the cookie, and essentially how often you want them to log in. Okay, so I think 30 days is good. And then the session timeout, the longer the better. Okay, so the longer the better. So 220 I think is great. Now we have here also to check the IP when log in via cookie. Yeah, why not? I think it's good. At the same time, it depends. Are you local? Are you remote? In my case, I'm on a local network. So I think I'm also always using the same IP address. But then if I do not use the local environment, I'm connecting remotely, again, I should have the same IP address with that cookie. Otherwise, you enforce the login again and the recollection of that cookie data. Okay, so we have some further options here regarding the cookies. I have them all set, yes. And then the show generation status message, the use cache for connection metadata. I have yes, because that will of course speed things up. We save that metadata also to the cache, yes. And we have a cache lifetime of 7 days. I have that set at. I think 7 days is good. We could extend that even, or reduce that depending on what you want to do. Now we have here also SMTP settings. Now generally I would say it is a good idea to add your SMTP in here, even for your local environment, okay? And that way, the notifications, you will receive emails. You lose your password, you will receive an email. Right now, I do not receive nothing. So I can get locked out, I can lose my projects, it can be a nightmare. So add your SMTP settings in there, and that way the environment is always going to notify you, email you, let you know something's wrong. Okay, so below that we have the option to use session in database. Now I generally like to say yes, but for the environment, it doesn't really matter. I think no, and at the same time, yes. What do you think? I don't know. Why don't you let me know in the comments what you think here is the best option? Because this is actually one of the options I've always kind of, I like to use the session in the database. At the same time, I like to show the option for the session variables for when we deploy our project, because I think that's good. And then also not to pass the PHP session ID in the URL. So that's why I have no set here. Now I don't really want to pass anything in the URL unless I specify it. And the majority of the time it is within the session. And if that's stored in the database, then maybe that is a good thing, right? Let me know in the comments what you think. Okay, so then we have here also the foreign key improvement. I have that as yes, that isn't one of the new features. And then we have here also display old menu application. Now that should really also still have the new tag there today when I'm recording. I think when you see this, it'll be a month or two from now, but really, that should also really be a yes. Okay. And again, that's your choice. Do you want to use the old menu? So you could go no. And that way the old menu system will no longer be displayed on the application creation interface. Okay, so once you're happy there, you can click update. And okay, I would again do that later because I want to continue here with the default values. And you see it's actually logged me out this time. So I will log in again and then return back here to my settings. So my settings have already been applied now, all of those that I had set. And we can just double check here. We had made some adjustments here to the days, the expiration time. Okay, so they're all configured. Do make sure you also set here your time zone, okay? Because if you don't set that, you will more than likely have some issues. And you also want to make sure that you have that defined within your PHP ini file. Okay, so with the default values, as mentioned, this is the same as we have here, the project default values. Now, I have a few videos on that already, and you can, of course, go check those out. Now, the values you have here are all of the same options or common options, as it says here, that you have within all of the applications available within Scriptcase. So that would be the grid, the form application, and with that, you can then specify here, for instance, the width that you want to have for all of your applications. For the grid, if you want to change the lines per page, you see here I have 15, 30, 60, 120 instead of the 10. Yeah, you know, I don't think 10 is really enough, but at the same time, it really depends on the project. So these are my specifications, and you may want to have something else. Now, there is also the all. Now, I could include that in here as well, but really for the overall, I think I will just add that when I actually want that, and it will save me from actually deleting it or removing it. And in those cases, maybe even 120 is enough. You know, 15, 30, 60 is enough for typical users, I would think. And then 120, I can again add that for the admin applications. Again, those are all choices that we would have to make when we actually fill this in. For the templates, the same goes, the toolbar, button positionings that we have here, and everything else. So that's all for you to decide on how you like the layout and look of the applications when you first generate them, okay? Because it will save you a ton of time from making those adjustments later. Okay, so with that set, you have here also your system folders. Now, your system folders here allow you to change the path of the configuration files, the libraries, the cache, the images, and everything else, okay? So you may want to adjust these, and at least you want to make sure you have them set correctly. Okay, so the applications path, you have the libs file. These are the files and paths also specified within your deployment. You have here the conf, and then the file doc and file cache. Now, the www root, so this is obviously the absolute path of your root. Yeah, so documents root, I love that one. But it's your root, isn't it? It's the main path, okay? So that is what you want to have specified for wherever you are going to have your applications tested and deployed and where you're working on them. Now, you don't want to change this to the WAMP position, okay? Not unless, for instance, if I load, for instance, my Scriptcase environment, which I have inside of WAMP, then this path will, of course, indicate my WAMP location, okay? So that's important to note. And the same applies with these other program files. So this path here may be different, of course, if you are on Linux, if you have Scriptcase installed in any other method than the default installation. So this is the default installation on the server, and that is of course a Windows server. Okay, so then we have here our projects options, and you can see here all of the projects that we have here, dates, times, how many applications there are, and so forth. Yeah, and you can see a whole list of actions here, okay, from the user, the administrators, when it was created, and so forth. You have then here also the security types of the environment. So I can specify users, which is the default. I can choose groups, and with the groups, I can make a load more adjustments as well as the group users. Now, generally the users will be good, but you can also maybe go with the groups. That is entirely up to you. You have also LDAP. So if you have an LDAP server, that may be the best path to go. Otherwise, within Scriptcase, you can manage your users from here. If you choose, of course, the Scriptcase authentication method and not LDAP, then you will manage everything in here. You will see the last insert times, the last login times, the applications they've created, and so forth. Below that, you then also have services available. So here I can update the online services for this user. Okay, so I'm online and that is me, of course. Okay, so if I click update, it will display any new users that have logged in. It will display the page as well as the application that they are currently on, which is really cool. So you can actually see what somebody is working on, how long they've been online for, when they access the platform, and how, when they logged in. Okay, so you have then also your backup. If you don't know how to backup, there are plenty of videos for that one, as well as the restoration. Okay, so you can restore your applications once they have been backed up. You have then also the configure log. So you can change the logging. So you can change the logging of the environment just by making the adjustments here and clicking the save button. We have then also the log. If you really want to view the log, again, you will have a calendar of all of the logins, applications, and everything else that users have been working on. So for instance, if somebody has been working on a platform or project in your environment, you will see a nice history here. Okay, so then we have the Scriptcase update, and from here, of course, we can update our environment, which of course I think is, if you've just installed Scriptcase, then go ahead and update straight away. You will more than likely have something there that you can update with. Okay. And then we have the online registration. So if you haven't registered yet, you will need to do that there. You have the offline registration as well as the offline request. So if you're having problems here with the online registration, you may need to go through the offline request and then registration. Okay. So maybe I can create a video on that one day. If you want a video on that, just let me know in the comments, and yeah, I'll be happy to create a video on that one, because it happens to me quite often. Well, used to actually, not so much in the last years, but as I earlier said, I've not actually installed Scriptcase as often as I would have done maybe a few years ago. Okay, so I think that is all of the settings, and with that, of course, you will have your Scriptcase environment, and of course there is an update now, and I should maybe go ahead. Let's go back to settings, and let's come back here to Scriptcase update, and update the environment while we finish the video, right? So with that, you will have all of the options covered, all of the basic settings that you would more than likely want to have configured within the applications. Now, within the default values that we have here for the application values, i.e. the toolbars, positioning of buttons, the widths, and so forth, open an application or create an application, create a project, just a dummy project, or generate one of the templates and create a few dummy applications. Have a look at the default values or default creation of that application. See where the buttons are and make your adjustments within the default values to where you would like to have them positioned by default. And there you go. You will have custom created applications every time when you generate your applications in Scriptcase. And just like that, you will save a great deal of time. So I hope that helps you. And if it has, please let me know in the comments. Be sure to, of course, subscribe, notify, or well, hit that notification button, or join the mailing list over at ScriptcaseByJamie. And just like that, we have pretty much finished the video today. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.